Hey guys, it's getting a little colder in Michigan. Leanna and I are doing a little bit of baking, and baking makes me think of security. Specifically, the kind of security that says, no, you can't eat my cookie because I baked it. And this actually has implications inside of our application because a lot of times we need to figure out whether the current user has access to edit, delete, or view something. So because of this, we've cooked up a delicious little application, which is going to show you one of my favorite and most underutilized features in Symfony, security voters. So I'll log in using username Ryan, password cookie, and basically we only have one page in this app which shows us all of these cookies that Ryan and Leanna have baked. Each of those has a nom button which allows me to eat the cookie, shows me a nice message, and deletes it from the database. Really high-tech stuff. The application is pretty straightforward. We have an app bundle, of course, and inside of there we have a single entity called Delicious Cookie. The most important thing about Delicious Cookie is that there's a baker username, which stores who actually baked this cookie. To keep this application simple, I don't have a user entity, so I'm just using a username string there. Right now, anybody can eat any cookie, no matter who baked it. But our goal is to make it so that you can only eat cookies that you've baked. The cookie controller holds the page that actually lists the cookies, and then there's one post-only endpoint which handles actually deleting the cookie from the database and setting that nice flash message. The only other interesting thing is security.yml. We have two hard-coded users, Ryan and Leanna, and I also have an access control which requires login for everything under /cookies, which is why we had to log in before we saw our cookie list. We take cookie security very seriously. Preventing me from eating a cookie baked by someone else is actually pretty simple, and what we should do first is just put the logic into our controller. So I'll do that here. If the baker's username does not equal the current user's username, we're going to throw that access denied exception and say, hey, you didn't bake this. And now if we try to eat one of Leanna's cookies, she catches us with a nice clear message. And of course, in the production environment, this would be your 403 error page. So what's the problem with this? The problem is that we also need to go into our Twig template and repeat the logic there. And when it comes to security logic, especially security logic that protects cookies, you don't want to repeat it across your application. If you change something later and forget to update part of your security, you're going to have a big problem. But for now, I'll do it manually, and we can see that the nom button hides or shows based on which cookies I actually baked. So the goal of a voter is to allow us to centralize that logic so we only have it in one spot. I'll create a security directory, which is purely for organization, and then put a cookie voter inside of it. I'm using Symfony 2.6 for this project, which comes with a fantastic new abstract voter class, which I'm going to use. If you're using Symfony 2.5 or lower, you can actually find this class on the internet and just use it in your project today. Just update the namespace to match your project and then extend it. This class doesn't have any external dependencies, so it's going to work just fine in whatever Symfony version you have. So I'll extend it and then use a really nice feature in PHP Storm to tell me the 3 abstract methods that I need to fill in. So let me back up because I haven't actually told you what these voters do. First, let me show you how I want our code to look when we're finished. Instead of doing the logic manually, I'm going to use the isGranted function, pass it a string nom, which is something I'm making up, you'll see why it's important in a second, and then pass the cookie object as the second argument to isGranted. The isGranted shortcut is new to 2.6, but all it does is go out to the security.context service and call isGranted on it. So this is exactly what you're already using in earlier projects. If you don't have this shortcut method, just go out to the security.context service manually. Behind the scenes, whenever you use the isGranted function, Symfony calls out to a bunch of voters and asks each of them if they can figure out whether or not we should have access. For example, whenever you pass role underscore something to isGranted, like role underscore user, there's a role voter class which tries to figure out whether the current user has whatever role you're asking about. What most people don't realize is that you can invent these strings. So in this case, I'm just inventing nom, and we're going to add a new voter into that system that says, hey Symfony, whenever the nom attribute is passed to isGranted, call me. To get that to work, we just need to fill in the getSupported classes and the getSupported attributes function. First, in getSupported classes, we're going to return the delicious cookie class string. This tells Symfony that when we pass a delicious cookie object to isGranted, our voter should be called. We'll do the same thing in getSupported attributes, and we'll return an array with a nom string. This tells Symfony that when we pass nom to isGranted, that our voter should be called. Whenever both of these functions return true, the isGranted function at the bottom of this class is going to be called. For now, I'll just use the glorious var dump to print the attribute, object, and user, and we'll put a die after that. At this point, other than the crazy debug code I have at the bottom, our voter class is ready to go, but Symfony is not going to automatically find it. To tell Symfony about our new voter, we're going to need to register as a service and give it a special tag. I have an app/config/services.yml file, which I'm importing from my config.yml, so we'll put the service there. The name doesn't matter, but try to keep it relatively short. And the autocomplete I'm getting is from the nice Symfony 2 plugin for PHP Storm. Our class doesn't have any constructor arguments yet, so I'm just leaving that key off. The really important part is tags. You need to add one tag whose name is security.voter. This is like raising our hand for our voter and saying, hey Symfony, whenever somebody calls isGranted, I want our voter to actually be called. So we have the voter, we have the service with the tag, so let's try it out. When we refresh, bam, we see things dumped out. Proof that our voter is being called. Now here's where things get really, really cool. Now in theory, because of my access control, this voter should never be called unless the user's logged in. But just in case it is, let's use is_object to check to see if the user is actually logged in. Remember, we need to do this because in Symfony 2, if you're anonymous, the user is actually set to a string. From here, it's pure business logic. If the baker username equals the user's username, let's give them access. Otherwise, let's not give them access. So let's refresh the nom request, and it works. We're logged in as Ryan, and we were actually nomming a Ryan cookie, so this makes sense. Remember, the goal of this was to centralize our logic. So now we can go into our twig template and do the exact same thing there. We'll use the is_granted function, pass it nom, then pass it the cookie object. And as you might expect, when we refresh, we get the exact same results as before, except everything is pulling from that central voter. Now, with everything centralized, I want to make things a little bit more difficult. In security.yml, I've given the Leanna user a special role called role cookie monster. If you have this role, I want to make it so that you can eat any cookie, even if you didn't bake it. Seems like a jerk thing to do, but let's try it out. To do this, we basically want to call the isGranted function on the security system from inside of our voter. Now, out of the box, we don't have access to do this, so we're going to need to do a little bit of dependency injection. If you're thinking that we'll inject the security context, you're basically right. The only issue is that because we're inside of the security system, if we try to inject the security system into here, we're going to get a circular dependency. Instead, I'm going to inject the entire container, which yes, is typically a bad practice, but in this case we can't avoid it, and it's not going to kill us. Head back to services.yml, add an arguments key now that we have a construct function, and use @service_container to inject the entire container. Back down in isGranted, we can easily add the logic we need. Now, I'm using Symfony 2.6, which gives us a brand new service called security.authorization_checker. This is actually a new service for Symfony 2.6. Before, it was known as security.context. Now, don't worry, because security.context still exists and will still exist until Symfony 3.0. So if you're on Symfony 2.6, use the new service name. If you're on 2.5 or earlier, just use security.context. The nice thing is that both of them have the same isGranted function on it, which we can use now to check to see if the user has the role Cookie Monster role. If they do, let's give them access. When we try it out, there's no difference, and that's a good thing. I'm logged in as Ryan, so I don't actually have this role. So I'll log out. Let's log in as Leanna, password cookie, and cookies for everybody. I want to do one more crazy thing. Let's pretend like we want to be able to donate our cookies to friends. Now, I know that's crazy. Why would you donate cookies to other people? But let's just try it out. I don't actually have the logic for this, but that's okay. Let's go into index.html@twig and add a link for this. We're just going to see if we can get the link to hide and show correctly. Just like before, I'm inventing this donate string. If we don't do anything else and refresh, you'll actually see that the link doesn't show up. If no voters vote on our attribute, then by default, it's going to return false. Now, why is our voter not voting on it? Because of the getSupportedAttributes function. Let's update that to return true for both nom and donate. Now, isGranted is going to be handling two different attributes, nom and donate. This is a perfect situation for everyone's beloved switch case statement. So let's set that up, and we have two cases, one for nom and one for donate. And the logic for nom is exactly what we had before, so I'll just copy that, paste that up, and if it doesn't get into either of those if statements, we'll return false. For the donate case, again, we can do literally anything we want to inside of this. If we want to go out and make crazy database queries to figure out something, we can do that. In our case, since chocolate cookies are the most delicious, let's only give away cookies that aren't chocolate. So for my crazy business logic, I'm just going to see if the word chocolate appears in the name of the cookie. If it does, I'm not going to give it away. But if it doesn't, you can have it. At the bottom of this function, I still have this false here. This should technically never get hit. Even if we pass something other than nom or donate to isGranted, Symfony is not going to call our voter because of the getSupportedAttributes. So you can put anything down here. I like to throw an exception just in case something insane happens, but you're going to be fine either way. Cool, let's see which cookies we can give away. This time we see the donate link only next to the cookies that aren't chocolate. That's perfect. Now some of you may be thinking that I'm crazy for having these strings like nom and donate all over my application. And actually, I agree with you. Normally, whenever I have a naked string somewhere, I make it a constant instead. So in this case, I'll create two constants, attribute_nom and attribute_donate. Then we can use these inside of getSupportedAttributes, and later we can use it inside of the isGranted function. This helps out with typos, but it also allows us, if we want to put some PHP documentation above those constants, so future us can come and read what nom and donate actually mean. We can also go into our cookie controller and use the constant there. And yes, we can also use the constants inside of the Twig template with Twig's constant function, but honestly, it's kind of ugly, so for me, I just keep the strings here. So security voters are all about solving that case when you need to figure out if a user has access to do something to a specific object. They help to keep your template logic and your controller logic really simple, and they're one of my favorite features. So try them out, let me know what you think. Symfony also has an ACL system, but it's incredibly complex, and I only recommend that you use it if you have really complex authorization requirements. If you can somehow write a few lines of code to figure out if a user has access to do something, do that in a voter. Don't worry about ACL. All right, see you guys next time.